So thank you, Dorcas. Thanks, Adam, the whole PfP family who kept on asking me. It's not for not wanting to come. It's I can be lazy, I can be a lot of things, and I think it was a gamble on your part to actually ask me to come and speak to you, because I'm like Mr. Maligana, who I think has left. Is he still here? Oh, he's still here. I talk about. I talk about politics, and when I spoke to Louise about this event, I said, but why do you want me to come and speak to you? I talk about weird stuff. I make people angry. I make people cross. Some of my slides are going to make people unhappy. And she said, oh, no, Justice, come on, let's do it. So I want to say I apologize. Mr. Maligan, it's Amandla PfP, Amandla. But I'm a naughty guy, so that slide was just to remind you how naughty I am. I really don't have much to say tonight because what we've seen here tonight has been so amazing. My daughters make jokes about me because we'll watch a movie and I start crying first, and they're always. So halfway through, in fact, the minute I sat down, I had tears in my eyes. I was feeling all like, what am I doing with my life, because I think the work that has been shown here, and I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's incredible. It's amazing. It makes all of us stop and say, what is my role in South Africa? What am I doing to make this country reach the potential that we all know it can reach? So I went through a lot of PfP literature, and I thought, what am I going to talk about? What should I talk about? And I thought today I wouldn't talk about anything much except to tell you a story. It's a story that inspires me. It's a story that makes me stop and say, all these school principals here, all these teachers, what are they doing? What's going on with these people? What kind of people are these? And I think if you think about the history of South Africa, they remind me of this young man, and some of you may recognize who he is. His name is Pixley Sakaseme. Pixley Sakaseme was born in 1881 in KwaZulu-Natal. It was a village. And in this village, along comes a missionary, a white man called Father Pixley, and he sets up a school in the village. He sets up this school, and a few kids go to the school and start learning, and some don't. But among those who decided whose parents said, go to the school, was Pixley Sakaseme. Pixley Sakaseme, you will recognize Louise in Pixley Sakaseme as I tell this story. So Pixley Sakaseme goes to the school, studies, learns, is quite a bright kid. And when he's about 16, he says to Father Pixley, my brother, I love you very much, but you know what? I want to get a university degree like you. Father Pixley looks at him and says, wow, there's no universities for people like you. There's no universities for black people. What are you going to do? You can't go to university. This is it for you. He says, no, I will go to a university. So Pixley starts writing letters to the United States of America. He writes to churches, he writes to business people, he writes to missionaries. He says, my name is Pixley Sakaseme. I'm a young kid in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, and I want to come to university in the United States. 100 letters come back from the US saying, no. We can't help you. Forget about it. Just go away. One letter arrives and says, okay, we will sponsor you to study. Where are you going to study? He writes to Columbia University. He gets some kind of letter saying, okay, come through. And he sits there, and people say, actually, sorry. He sits there, so people say, you don't have money to travel to the US. He sits down, says to Father Pixley, man, I need money to go to the US and I don't have any. Father Pixley says, what are you going to do? He writes another 1,000 letters to people, saying, I need money for passage to the US. And what happens? One person sends some cash, and he gets on a boat in Durban and sails across the world, across the Atlantic, gets to New York, and goes to Columbia University. He gets to Columbia University and says, hello, I'm here. They say, oh, it's the kid from Africa. He says, yeah, I'm here to learn. They look at his letter. They say, oh, there was a mistake. We can't take you. We can't take you. You don't have a matric or the equivalent of a matric. So Pixley says, what is a matric? What do you mean? I can do whatever you want me to do. They say, no. You have to have a school leaving certificate so that you can get into Columbia. He meets a few South Africans there, and they say, kid, sorry, go back to KZN. It's over. And Pixley Gaisakaseme sits around, meets a few other people, and he decides, no way am I going back to South Africa. He finds himself a school. It's called the Mount Hermon School. It's in Connecticut. And he goes to them and says, I need to get this matric thing you're talking about. And they say, okay, you can come to our school. If you go to that school, when I was in the US in 2002, Thabo Mbeki visited that school and put up a plaque on the school wall saying, a great South African, Pixley Gaisakaseme, was at school here at Mount Hermon School. So he goes to the school, gets his matric, goes back to Columbia and says, here's my matric. I say, it's a kid from Africa. Okay, you can come in. Pixley Gaisakaseme goes to Columbia. It is 1903. He enrolls for a BA. He studies. He becomes one of the top debaters at the school. He writes a speech in 1906 that becomes one of the most famous speeches in the world at that time. It starts with the words, I am an African. So in 1906, he gets his degree, and everyone says, the kid from Africa is going home now. He says, no, I'm not going home. He says, quality of education is a fantastic thing, and I want to go to the best university in the world. And so Pixley Gaisakaseme starts stalking a few people, Louise. He starts writing letters to all sorts of people across the United States, in the UK, saying, I, Pixley Gaisakaseme, am a kid from KwaZulu-Natal. I want to study law at the university, at Oxford University in the UK. He sends off 1,000 of these letters. He gets one reply back saying, here's a scholarship, and here's passage for you to go to the UK. And what do you know? 1907. There's Pixley Gaisakaseme on a boat across the Atlantic, gets to the UK, finds his way to Oxford, studies for 2 years, and gets his law degree. In 1908, Pixley Gaisakaseme then graduates, and people say, he's going home now. He says, no, I'm not going home. I'm going to practice law in the City of London. And they say, you know how tough the bar exam is. You'll never make it. It can't happen. You don't even think about it. And what does Pixley Gaisakaseme do? He sits the bar exam, he passes it, and he practices law in the City of London in 1909. In 1910, Pixley Gaisakaseme says, you know what? It's time to go home. Everyone says, finally. So Pixley Gaisakaseme gets on a boat, comes back home. He arrives here. He says, what's going on in South Africa? Look at this place. The English and the Afrikaners are talking about the union of South Africa. Things are happening politically. Things are changing. Where are the black people? Why are the Zulus fighting the Xhosas fighting the Sotho, the Bapedi are fighting the Tswanas? What's going on here? So what does he do? Talking about stalking, Louise. So he writes 100 letters to every Imagine what he'd have done with Twitter. I tell you, this guy and Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp, jeez. Anyway, so Pixley writes 100, 1,000 letters to all kinds of people in South Africa, the king of the Basotho, the king of the Zulus, and the chiefs, everyone he can think of, black professionals across the country. He says, all of them, we need to sit down and talk, because what's going on here? He says, all of you must meet me in Bloemfontein at the time, Mangaung now, on January 8, 1912. And they all get there. On January 8, 1912, they form an organization called the African National Congress. African National Native Congress at the time. And that's the organization you know today as the ANC. So if you think about the people we've been listening to today and say, what are these people doing? Think about what happened in KwaZulu-Natal in the 1880s, what happened in KwaZulu-Natal in the 1890s, what happened in New York in the 1900s. Someone, a teacher, a school principal, a business person, a philanthropist said, you know what? In education, you can find something amazing, and something amazing will happen. And so today, 104 years later, we have an election coming up, and you stop and say, where does this stuff come from? It comes from that kid. It comes from that time. It comes from that school principal. And for me, when I think about the story of Pixley Sakasema, who went on, by the way, to do incredible things. People talk about the Land Act and land redistribution and so forth. In 1914 and 1916, this is the guy who went to London to represent the king of the Swazis, to represent black farmers from Mpumalanga fighting the 1913 Land Acts. He did incredible things. He started a newspaper. He did all sorts of other things. When people nominated him to be the president of the ANC in 1912, he said, no, thanks. I'm busy with some studies and other things. And John Dube became the president. He did a whole bunch of things. We don't talk enough about him. But I'm glad that the people who spoke today continue the traditions of this young man. And I think the key thing about it is that we can stop and say, oh, you know, why is Justice Malala standing here speaking in front of us? I think the story of Pixley Sakasema, the stories that you tell, are because you made a choice. You said, it's not going to be, when I go home to Hammanskraal and people say, oh, Justice is so lucky. But I think of one teacher that I had, and he made a choice that the kids that I teach are going to get the basics of mathematics and English. And so at the school I went to, Joe Mudisa, the teacher I had, who lived in the village, said, if I see you walking past a piece of paper without picking it up and reading it, you will be in so much trouble. We walked around totally scared of walking past a piece of paper. So you'd have thought we were nuts. We walked around Hammanskraal, picking up papers, and is Joe Mudisa around? But all of us started reading at that age. He made a choice that with the kids that he taught, something will happen. And for many of us, that was the change that was needed. For me, it shouldn't be, oh, you know, Justice is lucky, and so every kid who goes to every school must have that chance. And the choices that you have made about what kind of school you want, what kind of education you want, is exactly what is needed in South Africa. So for me, choice, and the choices that the people in this room have made with PfP, with the schools, with the teachers, are absolutely crucial to turn around the education system in this country. I want to say it's been a month now that we have remembered, talked about June 16, and I think it's worth stopping and saying, what is this picture about? What are these young people about? They were about the quality of the education that we give our children. The quality needs to again and again rise to the top because we've done amazing things. I'm inspired by this quote from Malala Yousafzai. She said, "I don't mind if I have to sit on the floor at school." We in South Africa have done amazing things. I criticize this government a lot, and I've criticized government administrations before. But let me tell you, we have done amazing things with school infrastructure. We continue to do amazing things with school infrastructure despite people burning down schools. We can do better. But there is something that we need to do now, and that is the quality of mathematics, science, English, and other subjects. We need to continually improve those. And what you see with some of the things that the principals and the partners have been saying, this is our next big challenge. The quality needs to match what we are spending on infrastructure in schools. So for me, all these things are not about us. What's going to happen to South Africa? What will some force will get us to a certain place? I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's the choices we make today, every day, that will turn us around. And we can do it. I'm constantly amazed when I travel across this country. I'm inspired by what South Africans have done. And so I think we have many examples to emulate. I want to tell you about this lady. How many of us have known since we adopted our constitution that we have a public protector? Some didn't know, some knew, but it was just another Chapter 9 institutions. Let us think about what choices were made to make this office the darling that it is in South Africa. It was a choice. It wasn't, oh, this one will be amazing. It was a choice, a deliberate choice that we are going to turn this office into a fantastic one. And I think what PfP is doing, what all you amazing people here are doing is making the choice that it starts with me and it will continue with me. And I think that's an amazing thing. That's something that makes me humbled, that makes me feel very proud of you. And I'd like to say thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Louise, for stalking me. This has been the most worthwhile evening I have spent in a very, very long time. And I hope I'll be invited again. Thanks so much.